Okay, so welcome back. We are going to talk about warm-up unit, the second day, which is the first day of the second week. And you'll notice that I have listed the things that we're going to cover today. I like to put that down for my students to copy into their spiral if they wish. The one that's the most important, so I always point it out again before they leave at the end of the day, is their extra practice or their homework. So I'm going to greet my students and welcome them. And on their tables are some different forms of ID. Here's a copy of a driver's license. This is an example of a passport. Here is a citizenship certificate. This is the state of Texas election certificate, so it's actually voter ID, birth certificate, and green card. So hopefully I'm going to have better copies of these. I'm going to find somebody I know who has a green card and a citizenship certificate, and I'm going to actually make copies of them. I'm going to make a copy of my birth certificate. I'm going to bring a copy of my passport. So I'm going to have those on the table for them to look at when they come in, as my lesson plans state about our lesson opener. So when they first come in, they're going to be looking at those, and I'm going to say, what are those? Have you seen those before? What do you know about them? What do they have in common? Hopefully we're going to get to the idea that they're IDs. So I'm going to say that's what we're going to talk about today in our unit, lesson 2. But before we get to that, let's write the date. And I'm going to make a point of telling them that in the United States, we write the month, the day, and then the year. And I might give them a few different ways to write it. But a lot of our students don't have this style of writing the date, so I want to make sure that they understand that, and we'll write it every day that they come in, but just so they can see. So they've had their opening activity. We've talked about the date. Maybe we've talked about what they did on the weekend because it's a new week. I'm going to say, before we get started with our new material, let's take a look at our homework. So we're going to go back and open up our workbooks, and we're going to talk about what they did. Maybe this time I'm not going to go through everything since it's our second day, and we did similar things to these in class. I might go through this because the syllabic pronunciation is difficult. So we might go over exercise A, and then we'll probably look over here at the crossword puzzle since that's the first time they've ever done that. And then I might have them read some of these answers out down here. So we're going to look at the homework before we move on to our new material. Now I've brought in, of course, Master 13, one copy for every 2 students, and I've probably already cut this in half. So I have a stack of Student A, Student B papers, and of course I have my words for our hot seat game, and I have the CD, which I've pulled out of the materials box, and I wanted to point out to you that there is a table of contents included that tells you which track matches which unit. So you can quickly load it up in your CD player if you choose to use that. So after we've talked about different kinds of ID, and maybe they've pulled their IDs out and shown them around, and we've exhausted that topic. We're going to open our books to page 615. And we're going to look at the picture. And the first thing we're going to do, of course, before we read anything is look at the picture. We might talk about these words. I'm going to have somebody read the caption. May introduce that word under the picture. They're going to read these questions. We're going to talk about the answers. I'm going to either play my CD or read on 118. Some of them like to turn to the back and look at the words as I read on page 118. And then we're going to move to our picture dictionary. I always read the word, have the students repeat the word. We talk about what it means. Now, because we're going to play the hot seat game with these words, when we're talking about them, I'm probably going to write the word up here on the board. I'm going to say answer. And I'm going to talk about how answer doesn't look like it's pronounced. It's got an extra W in there. That's crazy English. I use that phrase a lot with my students, crazy English. We say answer. We don't pronounce the W. Answer is what? They'll say answer, then we'll talk about what it is. Answer is response to a question, or what you say when somebody asks you a question. So I'm going to write a short definition of each word up here. Later on, as we move through, I won't write the definitions. We'll just talk about them. But our first time through, okay, ask. What does ask mean? Ask means question. Question someone. Get information. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to write all the words. I'll probably erase this except for the bottom part right here that I've boxed off once they've had a chance to write all that down. I'm going to write all these words up here. We're going to talk about the definition, because after we do that, I'm going to say, okay, we're going to play a game. I'm going to put a chair here. This game is called Hot Seat, and you have to give a definition of the word so that the person who's sitting in the hot seat can tell me what the word is. Now, I've left this on the board because this is called scaffolding. It means that you're not asking them to come up with everything themselves. You're giving them a way to be successful in the activity. So, really, basically, all they have to do is look up here and say this definition. So, if my word for my person in the hot seat is, let's find one I've written, ask. So my student is sitting here and this word is over their head. The people out there are going to say, question, question. Hopefully they'll be able to remember it's ask. We may play this several times so they have a chance to all get an opportunity to really reinforce that vocabulary. Like I said, later on, I'm not going to do this part, but for the first time we do it, and maybe even for the second time that we play this game, I'm going to give them a chance to look at the definitions, because I want them to remember, too, to give a clue and not just say the answer. All right, so we've had one interactive activity. We're going to go on to the next activity, which is the class chat. And so we've talked about spell. Spell means to say each letter. So I'm going to let them get up, walk around, talk to each other. Tell me your name. My name is Angela. How do you spell that? I'm going to spell my name. That shouldn't take very long. Just a chance to get out of their seats and circulate and reinforce their friends that they've met in the class. You're building community. Grammar talk. We're going to talk about possessive nouns and adjectives. So we're going to go over this again. We did that last week in our lesson. We talked about Katie's book on Katie's desk. So we're going to use these words that they have here. Here's Tomas, Tomas's phone number. We're going to talk again about the apostrophe like we did last week. And then we're going to talk about the pronouns. My, your, his, her. We're going to review all of those again. We're going to come up with some new sentences. So I might ask them to generate a sentence for me using one of these pronouns. Pronunciation, syllable stress, and that's when we're going to talk about the sounds of English. And you'll see again, there's the little headphones. That means there's something on your CD that goes with that activity. Now, here's the part where we're looking at the ID cards. I'm going to remind them that we looked at some things like this morning on our tables as we came in. But this time, we're going to use possessive nouns, and we're going to use possessive adjectives. So Gary's is the possessive noun. It means it belongs to Gary. His is the possessive adjective, the word that we use to stand for Gary, so we don't have to say Gary, Gary, Gary over and over again. We'll probably work through this together, or maybe I'll let them work through it in pairs and then read their answers. Down here we're going to talk about, before we do that, we're going to go to our Master 13. See, there's my little note. Remember, I'm going to forget it if I don't have my note there. So then we're going to do this. So we've done this together as a class. They've got the idea. Now they're going to break into pairs, and they're going to do this. You're going to have to circulate to help them because they're not really going to understand the first time through what they're supposed to do. But they're going to catch on pretty fast. Then we'll talk about the rest of this page, and that finishes us up for everything that we're supposed to do in the textbook. This is page 17. That's our last page. Now remember, when they're doing this activity, they're doing it in their spiral, because they have a classroom set of the textbooks that stay in the classroom. But that's the only thing that that's the only writing activity that we've had, so they can just write that over in their spiral. We're going to move to Home to School. This will be our first time to break out our new book. This is exciting, and they have this. They have a copy of this. So we're going to break out our new book, and we're going to go to page 4. We're going to talk a little bit about the questions at the top to introduce the topic. We're going to talk about, and I'm going to tell them this is called the title. Remember, in this book we talked about the caption, which is usually below the picture. This is the title of the story. There's our apostrophe again that we talked about last week. We're going to, and since this is our first time to do this, I'm probably going to read this and let them follow along. And then, if we have time, I may go back and let people who volunteer. At this point, I'm not going to call on anybody because I don't want them to feel on the spot. Later on in the semester, I'll start calling on people. But right now, I might just ask for volunteers. Who can read the first sentence? We're probably going to talk about quotation marks and what it means when you see those, that somebody's saying that. Then we're going to get to here, we're going to do yes or no. This part, they can read themselves, and I'll say, okay, start number 1, number 2. People who don't want to read don't have to at this point because this is our first time, right? Now we're coming to the complete the story. So if you'll look, somewhere in the room I have posted how to complete a fill in the blank. Now, there's a lot of information here, so I'm not going to ask my students to write all this down. What I'm going to tell them is I'll probably bring them each a copy of this so they can have it. But if you don't want to do that, you can tell them to come up after class with their cell phone, which they all have, and take a picture of it. So they can take a picture of all the directions and go home and study it that way. But I want it in big letters on a poster for this first time through, because I'm going to ask them to read me this, and then we're going to work through it together. I've already introduced, last week we introduced the term word box, blank. They need to know that. And we've talked about quotation marks. So when we get to the part where it says, look for clues as you read to tell you what might fit in the sentence, I'm going to tell them a clue is the quotation marks, because that means somebody said that. What would that person be saying? So we're going to work through this together. We're going to follow this whole system all the way through. And that's going to take us quite a bit of time because it's their first time. But I want to be sure that they really understand how to do it. Then we're going to talk about what happened first. And I'm probably going to introduce this word to them. They love, by the way, learning new vocabulary words. Not just the ones that are in the book, but ones like this that you can pull out of the air and sounds really wonderful. Sequence. This word is called sequence, and it means put things in order. So we're going to sequence this story. What happened first? They're going to read me the sentences. We're going to talk about where they fit in the story. Once we get all the numbers in place, then we're going to read them in order and see if it makes sense. And then practice dialogue with a partner. This is their chance to talk. I'm going to have them pick a different partner from the partner that they used when they did this activity. Find a different partner and practice this dialogue with your partner. And then the last two pages, 8 and 9, are going to be ones that they're going to do for their extra practice. So I might actually read this to them as I assign the homework. They have it there written down to read again when they get home, but I want them to hear the flow of the language and how it sounds. And then they're going to use this information to fill in the blanks. And then when we come back together next week or on Thursday, we'll discuss it. They also have 2 pages in their workbook, so that's page 6 and 7. Right here. And we talked about this when I assigned it. Now we're going to go back. Oh, this is the one we assigned for today. So when we did our homework, we were looking at pages 4 and 5. I'm sorry, I think I told you wrong on that. So when we did our homework at the beginning of the day, we looked at pages 4 and 5. Now we're going to talk about page 6 and 7. That's what happens when you plan a lesson and teach it the same day. Don't ever do that. You will be prepared ahead of time, and I will too. So then I'm going to ask them, are there any questions about anything that we talked about today? Sometimes there are. They want to talk about how to write the date again, or they want to talk about possessive adjectives again. I don't emphasize these words that much. I write it down. They usually copy it down, but I don't make a big deal out of the grammatical terms necessarily. I'm more concerned that they know how to use it than that they know what it's called. So I'll ask for questions, Then I'll talk to them about whatever's coming up. I will see you again on, if this is Tuesday, this must be Tuesday. Oh, actually, I guess it's the 21st. Maybe it's Monday. I will see you again on Wednesday. Hope you have a great 2 days. If it's raining, I'll say stay dry. Whatever. I will look forward to seeing you when we get together again.